Welcome to Ideagen TV 2022. Today we are ecstatic to have with us the CEO of the CEO Forum Group, Robert Reiss. Robert, welcome.
Well, thank you so much, George. Good to be with you again.
You know, Robert, what a year. You know, we're in 2022. It's been an interesting few years for sure. And the work that you're doing, the insights, the books that we see behind you, the interviews. By the way, for our global audience, it wouldn't be right if I didn't introduce you as the CEO Whisperer. You are the CEO Whisperer. You are where CEOs gain the ability to see around corners. It's not a simple thing to do, but with your deep insights and perspectives and your first class interview skills, my gosh, Robert, you're seeing it all and changing it all, and you're changing the world. And the world seems to be at a deep inflection point with the arrival of 2022, and leaders are constantly modifying and adjusting their leadership styles. Robert, in your opinion, and I know you have one, what are some of the leadership practices that can help leaders respond to this just constantly, rapidly changing global environment?
It's a perfect thing what you said, which is seeing around the corner. So I think there's really just two core elements they have to do, because now things are changing at a super rapid rate. The first one you said is see around the corner. And you know who first told me that? Frances Hesselbein, who is at 106 years old, the oldest active CEO. And she learned that from Peter Drucker, that the first thing is you always need to be able to look around and have the agility. The second part is you need to really involve everyone. And I speak with Mary Barra, the CEO of General Motors, and she said, our goal is to be the most inclusive company in the world. So really what that means is you have to very quickly see what's potential, then you need to engage all of your team members. And once you do that, you come up with a plan. I'll throw one final thing. So this morning, I was interviewing Steve Jones, who is the CEO of Allied Universal. Now they have 800,000 employees. They're the third biggest employer in America, next to Walmart and Amazon. And when he started as CEO 25 years ago, they only had 400 employees. And I said, what's the key to you growing in these times? Imagine 800,000. He said, the key with everything, Robert, is agility. You have to be nimble because you have to be able to turn on a dime. So I think the large companies want the agility of the entrepreneurs, and the entrepreneurs want the resources and the powers of the large companies.
That's right. And I think, Robert, you bring up another incredible point, as always. You know, how does a company, how does a CEO, for example, in this case of an 800,000 person organization, remain nimble?
What you do is you always have your feelers out. You remove bureaucracy. That's what he said. You need to just have no bureaucracy, which means that anyone could get to you. Anyone could email you, call you up, and you have open access to everyone. Bureaucracy is the killer. I remember years ago when I interviewed Ed Whitaker, who was the CEO, the turnaround CEO of General Motors, in those days, totally different company, to try to save them. And prior to that, AT&T, he said, the problem is it's a matrix organization. You cannot have bureaucracy. So you need open, transparent communication.
Open, transparent communication and bureaucracy. And I guess, you know, when we think about bureaucracy, you think about a public sector organization that has bureaucratic functioning. But you're saying that also could apply to a private company.
It applies to everyone. You need to have complete transparency. You need to involve everyone. And you need to make decisions fast. I'll tell you the big mistake. The big mistake, like you once asked me the question, you said, should people gather data or should they make the decision? I remember when you were asking me that. The question, it's always best to just make the decision. That's your best. The second is make the wrong decision. And the third best is do no action. Because what you're going to do is you will fail quickly. And that's how innovation thrives. You just act and you move forward.
You act and you move forward. That's incredible perspective. And just as an organization, senior executives should be prepared to shift, and especially shift some of their responsibilities from a sort of command and control hierarchy to more of a network of teams when dealing with a crisis like we have over the past few years, where, again, I've mentioned this a lot, but for the first time in human history, perhaps, everyone had a similar experience. Everyone in every corner in the remotest part of the planet, similar experience. How important is it, Robert, to both delegate and to empower employees to make critical decisions? And what are the implications of this?
Well, first off, the work you're doing is amazing work, because this is where society is going together at Ideagen. When you talk about the 17 sustainability development goals, everyone is moving in that direction, right? So how do you get people to be nimble? How do you delegate? Well, it really comes from, I would say, the first CEO I ever met taught me this lesson. It was Herb Kelleher. And he was the CEO. This is going to be a 1-minute story, so hope you guys have time for that. So first guy I met, it was at a black tie event. And I went up to him. I said, you founded Southwest Airlines. What a great company. And how do you make a great company? What is it? And he said, well, it's not how much you pay for fuel. It's not how quickly you turn around the airline. It's when you see Mary Jo in the elevator and you say, how was Patricia's soccer game this weekend? So I said, oh, it's communication. He looked at me, goes, communication? No, he said, it's love. So at that moment, this is like 1996, the song from Tina Turner, What's Love Got to Do with It, is bouncing around my head. So I gave a highly articulate answer like, huh? And then he said something that is exactly the answer to your question right now. He said, love, unleashing the spirit of the individual. And that's what you have to do. Every person, everything has to be delegated. And it's all about unleashing, finding what someone's interests are and what their skills are, and involving them in a shared vision together.
Incredible, Robert. And, it's such, an important moment to think about what you just said. And it really wraps around the notion of empathy, right? It's interchangeable. And we're hearing empathy everywhere now. You have to be empathetic. You have to understand. Well, that's a basic element of communication, right? Because if I don't understand what you're dealing with or who you are or what you stand for, I can't possibly communicate properly with you. So, leaders are adapting to this change that you're describing quicker, faster than ever. With this in mind, do you feel it's important for leaders to assess all of the facts before they make a concise decision, or rather act quickly and to the best of their ability?
Act quickly and to the best of their ability. You can't gather all the facts. All you could do is start off as a leader and talk about context. And how you do that is you tell everyone involved, here is what the situation means, and here is how it impacts us all globally and will impact us for time to come. And then you get feedback and you act. And if you make a mistake, fail fast, because then you're just going to come up with new ideas.
Fail fast is a critical element. And so we're talking a lot about post 2022. We're in 2022. You were hearing about the metaverse and the future as it will be designed by X. How do you see the role of digital leadership changing?
digital is everything. Years ago, I think about 1995 or so, someone would ask people, is this an e-commerce company or not an e-commerce company? And the answer, I think it was Andy Grove from Intel, said, every company will be an e-commerce company. So right now, every company will be a digital company. Gosh, I interviewed the CEO of Land O'Lakes. You say, what business are they in? Butter. No, they're in software. They're creating software algorithms to help farmers. So digital is everything, and we have to think digital first. And the beauty of this next generation is it's going to be what Joanne Jenkins, the CEO of AARP, once said to me, a 5-generation workforce. So what we have to do is we have to take the digital natives and we have to put them with people who have perspective from many, many years and decades. You got to put them all together because everything will become digital.
Wow, and obviously big fan of Joanne Jenkins and AARP and a 5-generation workforce. I mean, wild to think about that. And so we pivot now to the ubiquitous conversation about supply chain, the global supply chain. We can talk about inflation at a later date. Supply chain. We're having issues in the United States and really across the world. Do you see this issue as a problem that continues indefinitely? Or do you see leaders coping with a lack of resources and making critical efficiencies that will not only mitigate, but change the paradigm in terms of the impact of this supply chain issue?
Yeah, well, I'll tell you, supply chain is very real, and it came home and hit me for the first time. You know, my magazine, the CEO Forum, reaches the top 10,000 CEOs in America. We're on, I guess, about our 36th or edition. This is the first time ever the printer said, Robert, we have no paper. I said, what do you mean you've no paper? He's great guy in Wisconsin, fantastic printer. They said, we can't get paper anywhere. And especially we know you like a certain type of paper. We can't get it. As we speak now, my magazine is a month past due, which sounds terrible for me. So we've just put out, talk about US Digital, we've just put out the digital magazine first instead. But so the supply chain is very real. However, I believe within 2 years, everything will come about because challenge creates solutions. And I think people have to, the way you look at it, I heard from Kate Gutman, and she heads up supply chain at UPS, and she also runs their global healthcare. And she was responsible, her team, for over 1 billion vaccines at a 99.99% success rate. So that's really good. And what Kate told me, she's just really wise, and she understands this all. She said, you have to understand your customer's customer. If we all work at this together, we could make everything happen. But, they're obviously a deep expert on logistics. So there's going to be problems with supply chain. It's impacted me, I'm embarrassed to say. I think we will get over it. And here's one thing I will say. Every challenge creates new opportunities. Think about the pandemic. Like, we are now in America eating al fresco everywhere. There are cafes anywhere you go. This never would have happened if it wasn't for this terrible pandemic. So out of every challenge, great new opportunities arise. And it's the same way the technology that's causing the supply chain challenges, well, it's helped other companies. Like I was speaking with the CEO of Ethan Allen. He's been CEO for Farouk Kathwari for, I think, about 35 years, a long time. And he said, well, we intentionally shifted over and we produce almost everything in America now. And that has helped us with the supply chain dramatically. So every challenge creates new opportunities. And I think that down the road, the supply chain will be a benefit, although right now it sure is painful. When you're looking at a guy like me, has a top magazine, I'm dying to get out to all the top CEOs, and it's being held.
You know, when I hear you say that your printer, just to think about that for a moment, your printer does not have paper to print, I would think that that is just the exact epitome of what we're talking about here. This is, and yet you think about the fact how you pivoted. You went digital first. You went digital first, and you innovated, and you didn't wait. You didn't hesitate, and you know there'll be efficiencies that arise out of that situation for the printer and for the examples that you cited. As Plato, our good friend, used to say, the necessity is the mother of invention. And, and this rings especially true because you have perhaps some Greek ancestry in you that we're going to tell the whole world today. I think it's important for everyone to know that the CEO Whisperer also is a percentage Greek, so Greek heritage. So always happy to highlight that. And as we think about the transformation, this digitization that you just alluded to, and the insights that you shared, how do you use entrepreneurship emboldening once the economic recovery takes hold?
I think John Chambers once told me the key is that entrepreneurs and large companies will have huge partnerships together. That is the direction that it always goes. And I think that is going to completely happen.
Wow, Robert. And so you specialize in interviewing. We're turning the table on you today. You specialize in interviewing these global leaders, these CEOs, and those that you really coined the term. You've coined the term transformative CEO. So these aren't just CEOs. These are CEOs that are literally able to see around these corners with a little bit of your help because of your role as the CEO Whisperer. Nevertheless, they're transformative CEOs. What is that common quality, Robert, that you see in every single CEO that you interview?
A sense of urgency. They're taking things seriously and becoming more accountable, and they know that they have to act quickly. You know, one thing on transformative CEOs, so I define it as a CEO creates new value that reinvigorates a company, reinvents an industry, or reboots society. And so with that, how does the transformative CEO play the role? Well, I believe that society is going to be driven more than ever by great CEOs. Great CEOs who have the vision, who, like you say, George, see around the corner, who are probably focused on the 17 sustainability development goals as well. And I think now, if I could sort of sum it up, I'd say is a great time. And this is why I think it's a great time. As painful as it is, think about this. In the 14th century was the bubonic plague. That was the harbinger of the Renaissance. In the same way, akin to that, I believe that the pandemic now is going to usher in a new renaissance, especially in health, of awareness, but more in global awareness. And I think the most important skill that anyone could have now is listening and having an open mind and being willing to change their thinking and to go along with other people regardless. Because when we all join together forces, it's amazing how strong mankind and womankind can be. And I do want to say, I think, as you know, one of the most important goals for me is about a dozen years ago, I said we needed to have 50 Fortune 500 women CEOs. And we were going back and forth at, I don't know, at 25, at 28. And then along came Women Business Collaborative, where, and And Women Business Collaborative is a collaborative of 60 different of the top women organizations, and they've galvanized everyone. And in full disclosure, I'm involved. I'm on the board, and right now we're over 40 women, Fortune 500 CEOs. We're moving up to 50, I believe, within this year. But the whole thing is, we are moving into a golden age where we will have everyone working together, and everyone, well, it's not going to be everyone, but a lot of people creating a whole movement to build a better world and society. And I believe at the forefront of that will be great transformative CEOs.
Well, Robert, and I'm glad you mentioned the empowerment of women and girls. We'll recall for a moment, it feels like maybe 100 years ago, it was only a few years ago, where we hosted the Ideagen Empowering Women and Girls Summit at the United Nations in the ECOSOC chamber. You were there, and that empowered woman that your mom was there.
Oh, yeah.
And so she started it. We know where it started. We know why you're a leader. It started with an empowered woman. You're empowering your daughter and your family, your wife, and everyone else included. And you're a great leader. And that's why you're the CEO Whisperer. Can't thank you enough.
Could I interrupt you before you do the final thank? Because the CEO Whisperer actually came from IBM. And I think there's a woman, Wendy Heller, who's a fantastic executive.
Oh, yeah.
And you know her. She's tremendous. And her daughter, by the way, is unbelievable, reinventing Providence, Rhode Island. But that's where the whole CEO Whisperer, in truth, came from. But I didn't mean to interrupt you, but I wanted to give credit where credit was due.
Well, you're still the CEO Whisperer. I mean, it doesn't change anything that we said. It just gives attribution to who started it. And we'll give Wendy Heller the credit for that piece. But thank you for your leadership. Thank you for your commitment to changing the world. And thank you vis-a-vis that for helping CEOs peer around the corners, all of these transformative CEOs, with all of the incredible work that you're doing at the CEO Forum. And also, if you want to find out more about Robert and what he's doing, just Google him, Robert CEO, Robert space CEO, and it will just start the line of content to reach Robert, to see what he's doing. The CEO Whisperer, Robert Reiss. Thank you, my friend. Happy New Year, 2022. Thanks for all you're doing to change the world.
Thank you, George. Always a pleasure to be with you.
Thank you.